Hello everyone, welcome to Lottie's Creations. Today I'm going to be showing you how I do the larger than matte cut using my Silhouette Cameo. So I am in Silhouette Studio and I'm going to go ahead and bring in the image that I'm going to be using. I'm going to just be using a simple Mickey Mouse design. So I'm just going to drag and drop that into Silhouette. And the first thing that I need to do is trace this image. So I'm going to go over to my tools palette on the right hand side and use my trace panel. I'm going to select the trace area. So I'm going to left click, hold down the mouse and draw a rectangle around the area that I want to trace. And what I'm going to do now is just kind of play around with my threshold until I am able to see all of my solid lines for the design. So I think that looks pretty good, and what I want to do is go ahead and hit trace. That way it traces all of the outline and interfacing for the Mickey Mouse. Once I have hit the trace tool, I'm going to left click on the white background area and just kind of drag that over out of the way. And as you can see, I'm left with the outline of the Mickey Mouse. So what I want to do here is go ahead and drag it onto my mat. And I know that I can create the background using a 12 by 24 mat. So what I'll do is go ahead and change my paper and mat size to a 12 by 24. So I'm going to drop down and say that I'm using a 12 by 24 cutting mat. And as you can see, it does adjust to show the 12 by 24. And then my media is also set to 12 by 24. So what I'll do is go ahead and just kind of adjust the size by left clicking on the adjusting handles and adjust my Mickey Mouse out. Okay. And you can adjust it as large as you would like, as long as it's going to stay within that 12 by 24. It doesn't matter if some of it hangs off, because that is, again, while we're doing the larger than matte. So we'll break it down in order for those pieces to actually fit. Okay. So right now, this Mickey Mouse is about 23 inches high. And what I'll do now is go ahead and click on the image, do a right click and release the compound path. Now, when I release the compound path, it's going to unlock all of the individual sections of the Mickey Mouse. And this is how you're going to start to build your pieces for your cardstock. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select my background area, because I know that the back of the Mickey Mouse is going to be a solid black. So I'm going to click on that outer edge so that it selects that background area. And what I'll do is go up to my fill tool, and I'm going to go ahead and make that black just to kind of give me a visual. And if I take my mouse and drag that out, you can see that this is just the background that is black. Okay. So what I want to do, any piece that I want to keep attached or cut out from the black background, I'm going to make that a compound path. So for instance, right here in between his arms, I want this to actually be open. So what I'll do is grab the black background by left clicking, and then I'm going to hold my shift key and click on this little red area to select that piece in order for me to cut it out from the background. And you can see it is selected because there's a little resizing handles around that. And then also right here by the nose, there's also a piece that I want to cut out from the background. So I'm going to grab that as well. Just kind of shift, hold down the shift key and select that as well. And then I'm going to grab the background area again. Okay, so once I have the two pieces selected, with everything selected, I'm going to right click, make compound path, And you can see it's going to knock out the background right here under his arm, as well as in between his nose. Now what I need to do is take each one of the pieces that's going to be a different color, and then go ahead and add the colors and kind of group those together, and also do the same thing, just kind of make the compound path. For instance, with his shoes, if you all notice, I'm going to go ahead and color the shoes yellow. And if you see here, there's a little cut. This cut is actually an individual piece. I want that to automatically show the background, the black, through that without having to actually color it in or use a black piece of cardstock. So what I'll do is go ahead and select just by left clicking and drawing a box around that whole shoe on the left. Right click, make compound path. And that's going to go ahead and knock that out just like it did the arm and the piece by his nose. With that done, I can go ahead and drag an arrow around the shoes, right click, group together. And if I drag them on top of the actual background layer, you can see where we did the knockout, the black is going to shine through. So I'll go ahead and continue doing that for my pieces. And I'm going to do it also for the glove. I'm going to select the glove as well as those 3 individual pieces. And I'm going to right click, make compound path, and I'm going to color the glove white. And if I drag that glove onto the shadow of the background, you can see that the black comes through because we did the knockout. And I'm going to continue to repeat that same step, just clicking those items. Now with this one, I'm going to go ahead and group it together so that those 2 pieces stay with each other. I'm going to color it white. With that one, I didn't need to do a knockout because there was no actual pieces that had to pop through. So I can just go ahead and group those, color it white, and then that one is completed. Now, if you notice, if there's any little leftover pieces, you can just kind of drag a rectangle around those and hit delete. You won't need those little pieces that when the image was separated, those pieces were kind of left behind. You can just delete them if you actually see them. Now with the mouth, I'm going to go ahead and make his tongue red, and I can move that out of the way. Now his inner eye, we know that those are going to be white, so I can go ahead and hold down the shift, select both of those, make them white. I can move them to the side and group them together, right click, group. Now as far as this part of his face, if I were to drag this on top of the shadow, let's say bring to the front, his eyes are not really knocked out. So what I want to do is go ahead and right click and make compound path. And when I drag it over on my shadow, I'm gonna go ahead and fill it in, and you'll definitely see what happens. Let's go ahead and make it like a brownish color. And you can see that the eyes have been punched out so that you can see the background through that image. And I'm just kind of put it in place so I can get an idea. And then if I were to take the eyes and put them inside, you can kind of see how that will go together. Okay. And then his tongue, just kind of bring that to the front, right click, bring front, add it in. And you can see these are all individual pieces of cardstock that are going to be cut. Now I'm going to do the same thing with his buttons on his pants, and then I'm pretty much finished with that setup. So I'm going to select both of those, make them white, drag them off, and I'm going to go ahead and group those together. And then with this pants, I'm going to go ahead and right click, make compound path, and then I'm going to turn it red. And then if I were to place it on the back of the shadow and then drag in the buttons, you can see how that would come together. Okay. So that's pretty much it for all of the individual pieces. And then what I would do is cut this out from my cardstock. So I would basically grab all the pieces that are going to be white, cut from my white cardstock. The yellow pieces will be cut from yellow cardstock. The face will be cut from like a brown color cardstock. And then his tongue would also be cut from the red as well. And all of these individual pieces should fit directly on my 12 by 12 mat. So I'm going to go ahead to my page setup and change my mat to a 12 by 12. And as you can see, they will fit. Now, because this is going to be a front and a back image, a double-sided image, what you would do is just go ahead and duplicate those images. And then one, you're going to also flip. So this second set, I may go ahead and object, mirror, flip horizontal because it's going to go on the back side. And then I would just kind of align everything so that when I cut it out, I can maximize my 12 by 12 cardstock. And then I'll do the same thing with the eyes. Just go ahead and object, mirror, flip horizontal. Oh, wait, forgot to duplicate that. So let me go ahead and hold Control and hit the right arrow to duplicate. And then I'm going to mirror, flip horizontal, one set. And then I'll do the same thing for this piece. Hold down Control, hit my right arrow to duplicate it. And then one set is going to be flipped horizontal. Mirror, flip horizontal. So that is ready to be cut from my white cardstock. And then I could move that off from the mat. When I'm ready to cut from the brown, I'll do the exact same thing. Let's see if we can get 2 of these on the page. And if you can't get 2 on a page, or if you do, you may just have to rotate one just to kind of, maximize your space and get everything to fit to that page. And you do want to make sure you're staying within your cut lines. So let's see if we can rotate it a little to fit both of them on the page. And then so both of those would actually fit on my 12 by 12. And then also object, mirror, flip horizontal. Now I may have to adjust it again because I did flip it. So I have to still make sure it's going to fit within those cut areas. And then once I have it, I'll just drag it off of my mat. Now this image over here, I can delete out of the way. I'll just drag both of those off of the mat. But I'm not going to change the position. That way when it's time to add them back to the mat, they're already basically sized, and I can also group it together. So when I just drag it back on the mat, I know that it's going to fit. Do the same thing with the red. Again, I'm going to duplicate that image and then flip one of them horizontal. And with that, I didn't really need to do a whole lot of adjusting. And then I'll do the same thing with the tongue, drag that on, duplicate it, Control, clicking the right arrow, and then flip one horizontal. And then with those, I can right click, group the reds together, drag it off of my mat. And the shoes, I'll do the exact same thing. Now I already have these grouped, so let me see if I can just kind of turn it. And I may have to ungroup them to get them to fit. Let's see, I'm going to right click, ungroup. And see if I can bring them closer together. And see if I can get multiples on the page. If not, then what I'll do is use 2 pieces of yellow cardstock. And it doesn't look like I'll get both on there, so I'll just cut 3. And then I know that I still have to run another piece of cardstock through in yellow to cut that other shoe. So I right click, group those together. Okay. And with the black background, what I'll do for that, again, I'm going to be using my 12 by 24 mat with those. So let me get these images out of the way because it's going to adjust my mat. So if I go over to my mat, and I change it to a 12 by 24. The Mickey Mouse is on there. What I'm going to do is tape 2 pieces of 12 by 12 black cardstock together. So basically, if you can imagine, I'm going to have a 12 by 12 piece of black cardstock across the top, and I'm going to put another piece across the bottom and merge them together on my mat, so that when I cut this image, it's a full 12 by 24. I don't have one piece of cardstock that's actually 12 by 24. I'm going to do that by putting the 2 black pieces together. And what I'll do is cut 1/2 of the Mickey Mouse. So for instance, I'll find me a good divide line. And what I'll do, so let's say I'm going to cut it here. So anything that's on the mat is going to cut. So if I were to do this right here, you can see where there's this red line, half the image is outside of the cutting mat. So basically when I cut this, it's going to cut all of this side, the right side of the Mickey Mouse. And this right here is just going to be a straight cut. Then what I'll do is come back, move the Mickey Mouse to the other side. And then this side will cut. And then what I'll do is place these 2 pieces together down the middle so that I have one completed background solid piece. And I'll do that twice because I'm going to actually mirror one. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and send everything over to my cutting machine. And to do that, I'm going to start off by just cutting out the individual pieces. And once I have all of that cut, I'll come back and show you all how I'm going to assemble it. So I'm going to go ahead and just change it back to the 12 by 12 and begin cutting out each individual piece using my standard cardstock settings. So I basically would do send, and I'll make sure I've loaded a brown piece of cardstock into my Silhouette machine. And then I'll cut the brown. I'll continue to cut the red, the yellow, and the white. And then I'm going to make sure my cut settings are all set correctly. So I'm going to be using a cardstock textured heavyweight. And I want to make sure my settings are set to cut. I don't want to just cut the edge because I do want it to cut out the individual pieces of the object, such as his eyes and his mouth, etc. And then you can see that my Cameo 4 is set. If I wanted to run 2 machines at the same time, I can run this piece on the Cameo 4, and then I can also go ahead and start cutting on the Cameo 3 as well. So I'll be back once I have everything cut. I'll show you how I'm going to assemble. Thank you, and I'll see you on part 2.